Welcome back to the Recruiting Roundup on the YouTube and podcast homes for BamaOnLine.com. Travis Reier, Andrew Bone, Tim Watts. We've got you covered as it is a bye week for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Certainly not an off week for the Alabama staff on the recruiting trail. And guys, as we bring you in here, let's talk first, though, about Ryan Williams, the outstanding 2025 wide receiver commitment for Alabama, making some headlines, I guess, of late, Andrew and Tim, as far as some games that he's taken in that don't involve the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Yeah, this was always the plan for Ryan. I don't know. There's nothing been like from the Alabama end. There's been nothing new. I mean, people are talking about him possibly reclassifying. Well, that's been on the table since the summer. They at least wanted to have the option. You know what I mean? Which is smart. If you can have an option, I think it's a smart. I think everybody should try to have as many options as possible. So that's nothing new. I know the Auburn side's talking about that a lot, but that's not new information. He was always going to take visits. That's nothing new. He has said many times he'll take visits. Joseph Hastings got him on the phone last night, and he again said he's 100% committed. He's all in. Andrew has some information about what his correspondence with the Bama staff while he was at Auburn.
Yeah, I mean, this is this was kind of a situation where he's been to Tuscaloosa, 4 out of 5 weekends this season so far. He wanted to see something a little bit different. Wanted to go back to Auburn, which he's been down there already this season. And I think that he was in contact with Alabama kind of throughout the weekend. He came out and said that. We kind of knew that, but he came out last night and said that he was in contact with coaches. Was texting with some players after the game. Watched the game at Auburn Stadium on Saturday. So he was really excited about Alabama's win. We saw him on social media, liking a lot of posts, and we know kind of where things stand with Ryan right now. As far as what he's told us, on and off the record, we talked to his family, and it seems like everything's looks pretty good for Alabama as of right now. Does that mean that things are going to slow down as far as Auburn's pursuit or Georgia's pursuit, Texas? No, all these schools are still trying to get him in for visits this season.
I mean, you're not a very good recruiting staff if you're not all in on a guy like Ryan Williams.
Right.
And I don't mean just Ryan Williams. I mean, anybody of that caliber, if he answers your phone call, you make the call every time, right? So that makes perfect sense. I know Alabama fans were like, Auburn's going all in. Auburn has been all in. He's an extremely talented player. They would love to have him. They're not just now going, wow, this kid's good. Let's jump in here. They've been all in, full court push on him. But, I mean, it's recruiting. You've always got to give the hey, it's recruiting, so anything could happen. But this one feels different than it did with Perry Thompson. And as Andrew pointed out, Perry was saying he was 60% sometimes 100%. Perry's behavior was different. Also, everybody's going to handle this process differently. Last year, we're just a year removed from if Caleb Downs steps foot at Ohio State, he's going to flip. We're just a year removed from Caleb taking a visit to the Ohio State-Michigan game, which he always wanted to see, the guaranteed flip from Ohio State people. So all these things play out in a different way. But, the feedback we've got is Ryan's good with Alabama right now.
Huge win for Alabama on the field last Saturday against the Tennessee Volunteers. I got to think, too, a huge weekend in Tuscaloosa as far as targets, not only for what's still left out there in 2024 are concerned, but looking down the road, 2025, 2026. So, Tim, we'll start with you. Just kind of your reaction on the recruiting front to the weekend that was, I guess, a priority running back of note on campus once again, and several other highly regarded prospects.
Yeah, I mean, the environment, it's been, all the feedback we've gotten is just incredibly, you saw what the crowd was like and the feedback and just the atmosphere, and the coaches were just overran. That's what's so hard for these coaches. They get a game like Tennessee's coming to town. You get these visitors coming in. Now, I do think the attendance list was a little bit shorter than it will be against LSU. I think it comes down to, are you going to both these games? If you got to choose a game, which one would you go to? I'd probably go to the LSU game, right? I pointed this out on the round table. When you look at like Ryan Williams is 17 years old. Alabama's 16-1 in his lifetime against Tennessee. he might not see that as the rivalries that some older guys like we are, as we see it as Alabama fans can. Now the LSU Alabama game, I think people his age is very familiar with how this game's been played out, because he was, all these recruits saw it, were aware of the 2019 game, the 2020, they've been aware of the Smitty game there. So yeah, but I think it was an A+ turnout and A+ effort from the fans.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so as well. We talked to a lot of different kids who are in Tuscaloosa, and even though it was kind of a shorter list, there's not a lot of spots remaining in this year's class. I mean, Alabama's currently sitting with 20 commitments. They're probably going to sign anywhere between 26, 27 guys. So not a lot of spots. So when you bring in 3 or 4 guys in that 2024 class who could potentially be in your class, that's a big, kind of a bigger group than we were kind of expecting as far as remaining targets. Alabama extended a new offer last week to William Eccles out of Houston High School in Mississippi. He's an Ole Miss commitment. Just offered on Wednesday, made the trip to Tuscaloosa on Saturday. Going to be back for the LSU game here in a few weeks. We mentioned Daniel Hill was also in Tuscaloosa for what seems like his 300th visit to Alabama over the course of the last couple of years. Been to Tuscaloosa, definitely more than anywhere else, and probably twice as much as all the other schools combined. So I think a lot of people are just kind of waiting to see, is he finally going to pull the trigger, or is he going to potentially continue to look at South Carolina and Tennessee? Now, there was one pretty intriguing prospect who was in town. That's Steve Mbamua, who made his trip down from Quebec City. Now, this was originally supposed to be an official visit, but he changed it up, made it for an unofficial visit so that he can take his official visit in December. This was his first ever college football game experience. Imagine going to your first ever college football game and, being really high on the program, being Alabama, and seeing what Alabama did in that second half, especially as a defensive recruit. Alabama going out, shutting Tennessee 27-0 in that second half. So, pretty remarkable performance.
Man, did he look good? Like, he made Freddie Roach, he made Freddie Roach look tiny. Freddie Roach isn't a small man on that photo with him. He's big.
He's listed at 260 pounds on his profile page. He checked in at 274.
It's a good weight. He is big. That's a big joker. So, Alabama did a good job getting him there. And Andrew made a great point, is like, I think all fans, you want like 30 Christmas presents every Christmas, right? But you forget last year you got 30. So this year you're probably not going to be able to get 30. So the class is going to be smaller. We've said this. We said it before the year. We said it during it. We're going to say it after. This recruiting class as a whole nationally just isn't as good as last year or next year's. It's not. And you don't want to take a guy just to take him. Again, the portal is going to play such a huge role. And look at the guys on the portal on this year's team having an impact. Just look at those guys. The portal guys are having as big an impact as almost any signee out, not named Caleb Downs, right? I mean, all those guys are, really, coming in and playing. So I think it's just like slowed down. And also I think the fans forget, like, Bama's so, they're like a wave. I mean, during the season, there's just not a heavy recruiting pitch. They still recruit, but when it gets closer to December, as it is, you're going to see things really start to pick up. And I think we saw that first step this week.
Running back from just down the road, I guess, Daniel Hill, back in Tuscaloosa on Saturday for the Tennessee game. Tim, Andrew, what is it continuing to look like maybe on that front with the 4-star back?
I got some intel saying that Bama had put themselves in a really good position. Sounds like that maybe he was entertaining. I know South Carolina hasn't helped herself with this season, we've been told. And like Andrew said earlier, he's been on campus as many times as Jace McClellan, I think sometimes. He is on that, like, I think he's got an apartment there. He visits all the time for the last 2 or 3 years. The family's very Bama friendly. So that helps. He still hadn't made a decision. I think Alabama's did a good job there of weathering the storm. Tennessee's went all in trying to get him as well. So that's his 3. But I do think maybe the tide is turning, to use a cliche here, a little bit back towards Alabama. And we've seen it kind of Alabama South Carolina had a very positive field not too long ago, probably to start the season. Maybe that's backed off a little bit.
Yeah, you look at what Alabama signed in last year's class with Justice Haynes, Richard Young, two of the top four running backs in the country, and that's probably hurt Alabama a little bit as far as getting early commitments. We saw Nate Frazier end up going to Georgia, but outside of Nate Frazier, there was really only a couple guys that they really heavily pursued, and one's Daniel Hill, who's they've kind of been holding out for a while. Another is Kevin Riley out of Tuscaloosa County, committed to Miami during the summer. He has been to Tuscaloosa a couple times this season. And, we're not putting him on, any sort of flip watch, but it is somebody that we're going to probably continue to watch moving forward, especially if he makes it back over to Tuscaloosa and potentially for an official visit before signing day.
It's not a great year for running backs. I mean, we said the class is bad, but Nate Frazier really probably is the best guy as far as the biggest name. Alabama lost out for him to Georgia, but I think that factored into last year when they took two running backs of the caliber they got. They got two that, like Andrew said, two of the top five in the country. So they kind of knew that. One thing about Saban's staff is they're pretty good at figuring out what's coming down the pipe and what they've got to work with right away. So you've seen them fill up on early. You've seen them go heavy on a position in one class and then the next class go lighter. Like last year, heavy on tackle. This year, there's just not that many tackles out there.
Going into the bye week, guys, and understanding it's anything but an off week for the Alabama staff. What does this week consist of, for the Alabama assistants? And as you guys have pointed out, it's rapidly filling class. So is it a little bit of 2024 with a lot of 2025 and 2026 mixed in?
Well, there's not. They're actually going to be, working in Tuscaloosa for the most part this week. Is they're going to continue to have practice. So I think, a little bit later on in the week, probably on Wednesday night, you're going to start seeing some coaches hit the road, get on some planes, and they're going to be at schools on Thursday. Friday, stopping by several different places. They're going to go to some, a lot of them will be at games on Friday night, maybe even on Thursday night. But I think, what you'll see some of these coaches stop by, some of their top priority targets that are still out there, guys that they haven't seen yet. Now, keep in mind, they've gone out to games already this season. So they've seen kids already. So it's more about who have they not seen, whether that's flying out to California, going out to Texas, going to different places in the country that they just haven't been able to get to because of the schedule. I do think that you're probably going to see more some offers pop up, not necessarily in the 2024 class, but you'll see offers pop up in 2025, 2026 when assistant coaches stop by these different high schools because they've been able to, there's a lot of midseason highlights that are out there right now. They've been able to watch, a lot of different kids so far this season. They'll stop by a lot of those high schools, see kids. Of course, that will, kind of continue once we get into December. But, I do think that we'll see Alabama stop by and see, some of the top priority remaining targets and maybe even a few 2024 guys that they haven't offered yet that they could decide to pull the trigger on, a little bit later on this season.
And I guess, Tim, you're also anticipating the next portal window in all this that you kind of have to factor in for 2024 and just another element in this thing that makes it even more dynamic.
It used to be a lot easier. Now, at the time, it's like the guy in the office said, I wish they'd have told us when the best of times were so I'd enjoyed them more. I think college coaches probably feel that way because, it used to be mind my business, SEC championship game that weekend. The next day, Sunday, boom, we're on the road. We're driving, we're flying, we're seeing everybody. Well, now you really don't have that luxury because of the early signing period. And I don't know the number last year, maybe Andrew does, but the vast majority of each class is signing 70, 80%, I imagine. So you're really whittling down that list. So you don't really get a chance to go see them after Christmas. You got to see them, when you can. So that's up to states. And Alabama's always did a really good job of managing that. And it helps when you've got you've got a home run hitter. It's basically Nick Saban's basically Barry Bonds, right? You can get in a recruitment pretty quick with a phone call. And he does a good, obviously he knows how to recruit and his reputation precedes him. So they can do that. But the stakes are up. I mean, they have to get after recruiting a little bit more. you've got to sit on them a little bit more. I mean, because that early signing period, it'll, you know how many kids are committed where a school's quietly recruiting them and telling them don't say anything. It's a lot.
And
It's a
guys,
lot.
I wanted to ask you this. I want to do this more on a weekly basis. From this previous week, was there some movement? Was there an item of particular interest? Maybe it was subtle. Maybe it flew under the radar that struck you as potentially impactful on the recruiting front, Andrew, for even this 2024 cycle. The last 7 days, maybe something that has happened that struck you a certain kind of way.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. I think with William Eccles, the defensive lineman out of Mississippi, receiving an offer from Alabama. Going watching his film, wondering why he's probably not ranked higher and doesn't have a ton of a lot more love. Even a potentially top 100 kid. I mean, this is a 6'3", 300-pound big body in Mississippi, and
Dancing bear, Tim Watts. Dancing bear, right?
Dancing bear. Love the
those
dancing
Mississippi
bears.
kids, those Mississippi kids, they tend to get ranked a little bit later on in the process, but properly ranked a little bit later in the process. But that's a kid that we're going to start watching a little bit closer. One other note: Arian Hampton, Texas wide receiver commitment, made a trip to Tuscaloosa this past weekend. Alabama's been communicating with him for the last several months, but he made a trip back to Alabama. Now, didn't really spend a lot of time in Tuscaloosa. It was just there for the day, but I don't know if anything's going to really transpire there. But the fact that he made the trip, from Texas to Tuscaloosa for the Tennessee game shows that there's still a little bit of interest there. So we'll see if there's potentially any movement moving forward. But as of right now, wouldn't really bank on him as a as a flip guy, but definitely somebody that that we'll probably continue to monitor a little bit.
What about you, Tim?
I'll tell you what stood out to me. It's not Bama related, but was the the Florida defensive lineman Armando Blunt, who just flipped from 25 to 24 and flipped to FSU for Miami. I mean, you're talking about the unexpected twists that come with this. I mean, this guy, we saw that earlier with the quarterback who was committed to Florida. He jumped a class or two and then ends up signing with Ole Miss. So these coaches are dealing with guys that are now, like me and Travis said, when we reclassified, my parents called it flunking. I went back.
Yeah, I went back.
I never heard of anybody going forward.
That was a gray shirt. Yeah.
I spent some summers making sure I didn't reclassify. You know what I mean?
But seriously, though, guys, Andrew, it seems like reclassifications in football is growing, is trending upward, and kind of has taken the lead from basketball, like we've seen too.
Yeah.
I guess among the many changing elements in recruiting, reclassifications here too.
Well, you can get that NIL money, first of all.
Get to that NFL deal quicker.
Yeah, that's another thing. You get that early contract in there. That's important for positions like running back. You want to be as young as you can getting your second contract in the National Football League. I mean, we've seen, saw it with Sean Alexander, Dalvin Cook lately. Saquon Barkley's about to get, probably, hosed on that. But yeah, I think with that, now I will say this, especially with the quarterback, we're seeing guys reclassify, but a lot of times it's back to where they were supposed to be.
Right.
Because before they reclassified the Tim Watts way, they went backwards. So then I think they took some, went back and got in their class. So we're seeing that. But when you can get that, and also that's an attraction. I think that's kind of what Auburn thought they was happening with Ryan Williams. But that was well before they were
right,
involved. He was already considering trying to do this. So some guys are ready for that. You've seen guys at Alabama like Minka, Jonathan Allen. If they'd classified up, they'd have been ready, but not everybody. Marlon, probably not a good idea for Marlon to have hopped up there. Probably helps for most of us to get a little maturity, but some of these guys are just ready.
Seems like, Andrew, whether you reclassify, you might still be looking at a redshirt year. I mean, Des Ricks, right? Des Ricks jumped up a year, and it's a developmental year for him, understandably, at Alabama, it looks like.
Yeah, and remember Quinn Ewers did that. But he got that NIL money and then went back to where he started.
That truck, too.
Which was Texas. You know what I'm saying? So you get that. That's, it's the same thing for Ricks. He's in the system, so to speak.
But
So
the good thing for Ricks is he is working in a secondary with Kool-Aid, with Terrion Arnold,
Coached
learning
by
from
Nick
those guys.
Saban.
Coached by
yeah.
Yeah.
Nick Saban, T-Rob. I mean, he's
I mean,
got a chance.
IMG's great, guys. We're not taking a shot at IMG, right? But damn, pretty much what
And
Andrew's
also,
saying.
that's a position for Ricks where there's no I should be playing. You know what I mean?
Well,
You look
in
around, you're like,
Alabama going to the portal for Trey Amos,
yeah,
that's something you got to consider in all this too.
yeah. But Rick's got a huge upside,
Oh, no
obviously.
doubt.
Just learning, and most of the Bama DBs tend to learn on the job. Most of them aren't coming in starting in that, lining up on an island as a freshman. I mean, Dre didn't, Marlon didn't, all those guys. A lot of them paid their dues on special teams, in fact.
Yep.
Well, guys, it's been a lot of fun. Anything else you'd like to throw in there? Any closing comments before we wrap up the latest recruiting roundup here?
I just think it's a wild ride ahead of us, and I will tell a lot of people are like, they want a surprise, but remember this, all surprises aren't good. I watch Halloween movies and all surprises are not good. I watch scary movies. So I think there's a wild ride ahead. I think Alabama has put together a really good class on the heels of a great class, and they're on the process. And we didn't even mention Zion Grady's on the verge of committing. He's a 2025 guy. He set the date on November 12th. Me, Joseph, and Andrew have discussed it. We feel pretty confident with Alabama's position. They had the number one class in the country, I believe, in that class. And that's early, granted, but it's definitely got off to a good start. But it doesn't seem like there's a lot of recruiting left, but every day there's recruiting, whether it's holding on to what you got or trying to take what somebody else has got. So,
Andrew, what do you got for us? Take us out of here.
I mean, we're less than 2 months until the early signing period. There's going to be a lot of ups and downs. There's going to be a lot of twists and turns. There's going to be a lot of different rumors. Don't believe everything you hear. We're going to try to keep everybody on the straight and narrow on BOL. But I think that over the course of the last couple of weeks, we've seen a lot of kids come out and say that they're going to take official visits to Alabama. That they're going to get to Tuscaloosa for that LSU game. There might not be a lot of spots left, but Alabama's still, recruiting several guys who are out there, and you never know what kind of surprises we may see. Tristan Jernigan, who's from Mississippi, currently committed to Texas A&M, coming in for an official visit to Alabama next weekend. So that's a linebacker recruit that we're going to be watching a little bit closer. Zay Mincy, top 100 safety out of Daytona Beach, was in town for an official visit. Now Alabama has a loaded defensive back class, but he's still one of these guys that Alabama's continuing to pursue. So it's going to be an interesting ride over these next several weeks, and we're going to be telling the story.
You just gotta feel that at this stage, Nick Saban knows what he's doing recruiting, right?
I don't know, Tim.
You just gotta
I don't know.
There's people that
I need more data. I need more data.
2 more years, and I think we'll have enough to really put a spreadsheet together.
It's a small sample size, Tim.
Hey, they'll lose some, but they're going to win the most. I'm a guy focused.
Don't be a hot take artist, Tim.
Hey, don't. Hey, I need a graphic for that take. Give me a graphic. I'm tweeting it out. Tim's hot takes.
Tim's takes.
Hot sauce on Monday.
Oh no, I keep coming up with these different shows. I keep giving myself more work. Is what I do with these things.
That's what I like. Work, Travis.
I know, right? Well, guys, we appreciate your work, obviously. Joseph Hastings as well, doing a great job for us on the recruiting front, and also a big weekend for basketball official visits at the University of Alabama. And we're continuing to update those at BamaOnLine.com. Billy Richmond, Darian Reed in town, Joseph Hastings, I've seen here in the last little bit, with an in-depth update from Darian Reed on his trip to Tuscaloosa. So on the hardwoods too, you want to keep up with that with us at BamaOnLine.com. Thanks again, guys.
Thanks. See you next week.
For Tim Watts, Andrew Bone, Travis Schreier, thanking you for joining us here on the Recruiting Roundup on the YouTube and podcast homes for BamaOnLine.com. And until next time, so long, everybody.